Mom's voice sliced through the storm like a verdict. We've decided this isn't your home anymore, Indy. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The porch light flickered behind her, rain streaming down her face like tears that didn't belong to her heart. My 12-year-old daughter, Lily, clung to my arm, barefoot and shaking, her small fingers digging into my sleeve as if she could hold us both together. Tessa stood just behind Mom, dry under an umbrella, her husband Ray smirking beside her. They looked like judges on a stage, and I was the fool who didn't know her sentence had already been passed. The air smelled of wet asphalt and betrayal. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. Mom, what are you talking about? I said, my voice breaking over the roar of rain. Dad left this house to me. You know that. You were there when he signed the trust papers. She didn't even blink. Your father wasn't well. He was manipulated. We've already spoken to the attorney. The deed has been transferred. Her tone was surgical. No hesitation, no warmth. She might as well have been reading a weather report. Tessa's hand brushed her mother's sleeve, a silent gesture of victory. I felt the bottom drop out of my chest. Transferred? I repeated, my breath visible in the cold. To who? To me, Mom said calmly, and your sister. It's for the best. You can't handle the upkeep on a property like this. You should be focusing on Lily, not playing homeowner. Thunder cracked above us, as if the universe itself objected. I wanted to argue, to scream, but Lily's tears caught my attention first. Mom, please, she whispered, voice trembling. Can we go inside? I'm cold. I turned back toward the door, but Mom stepped in front of it. You need to leave now, she said softly, almost pitying, like a nurse telling a patient the bad news. Behind her, I could see the faint glow of Dad's study, the room where I'd sat for nights reading medical journals aloud to keep him company. The house had been his heartbeat. Every wall held the sound of him coughing, laughing, dreaming. And now they were claiming it as their own. Mom, please, I said again, barely recognizing my voice. At least let Lily get her jacket. No, she said, already turning the lock. The door clicked shut between us, final as a coffin lid. For a few seconds, I just stood there, unable to move. My reflection blurred in the glass, hollow eyes, rain-matted hair, exhaustion carved into my skin. Tessa's voice came muffled through the door. We'll have someone send your things. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Then their footsteps faded, and all I could hear was the storm. Lily buried her face in my side, sobbing. Why are they doing this? I didn't have an answer. My throat felt scraped raw from the inside. Because they forgot what love means, I finally said, wrapping my arms around her. The wind howled through the empty porch, carrying the smell of the roses Dad had planted the year I graduated nursing school. I remembered him smiling, saying, "This house will always be yours, Indy. It's where you belong." I wondered what he would say now if he saw his wife and daughter standing on opposite sides of a locked door. We stumbled through the rain to my car, a rusted Honda with one working headlight. Lily sat shivering under my jacket while I tried to call Michael, our family attorney. No answer. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, headlights slicing through sheets of rain, every street unfamiliar, even though I'd lived here my whole life. Finally, I pulled into a rundown motel on the edge of town, the kind of place with flickering neon and damp carpets. The receptionist didn't even look up when I handed over my card. In the room, the heater wheezed and coughed, struggling against the damp. Lily curled on the bed, still in her soaked pajamas. I found a towel and wrapped it around her, pretending not to notice that her lips were blue. "It's okay, baby. We're safe now," I whispered. She didn't answer. When she finally fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper. My phone buzzed again. Michael texting back. We'll talk first thing tomorrow. Don't panic. Everything is still under the trust. I wanted to believe him, but Mom had sounded so sure. The woman who taught me how to tie my shoes had just turned me into an intruder in my own home. How does that even happen? I rubbed my temples, trying to think logically. Maybe she'd been manipulated by Tessa. Maybe grief had twisted her mind. But deep down, I knew better. Mom had always resented the bond Dad and I shared. She hated that he called me his rock, the one who never gave up. When I moved back home to care for him during his chemo treatments, she accused me of playing the saint. Now that he was gone, she'd rewritten the story, painted herself as the victim and me as the schemer. I opened my laptop, the screen glowing dimly in the dark. Dad's digital trust documents were still saved under my name. I scrolled through them, searching for something, anything that could prove my right to the house. The last page held his digital signature, notarized, time-stamped. My chest tightened with relief. You made sure of everything, didn't you, Dad? I whispered. But then another thought crept in. If Mom had already filed something with the county, could she have forged new paperwork? The idea made my stomach twist. I took photos of every page, sent them to Michael, and backed them up on the cloud. I couldn't afford to lose this battle. Outside, the storm raged on, lightning flashing like camera bulbs. My mind replayed the moment Mom closed the door, her face calm, almost satisfied. She had waited for this, maybe even planned it. My humiliation was complete, and she knew it. I'd been the dependable one my whole life, the nurse who never said no, the daughter who showed up when others didn't. They'd mistaken my silence for weakness. Maybe it was time to remind them what quiet strength really looked like. Around 3 a.m., I got up to check on Lily. She was asleep, clutching Oscar, our orange cat, against her chest. I crouched beside her, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. I'll fix this, I promise, I whispered. My reflection in the mirror looked like someone I barely recognized. Hollow eyes, but burning. Posture slumped, but unbroken. For the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt something stronger than grief. Determination. At dawn, I packed our few belongings and drove back toward the neighborhood. The sky was pale gray, the kind of color that comes after a long storm when the world is too tired to shine. As I turned onto our street, my heart lurched. The house was lit up, smoke curling from the chimney. Through the window, I saw Mom pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the one I'd bought her for Mother's Day, the one that said, "Best Mom Ever." The irony stung like acid. Tessa's car was parked in the driveway, loaded with boxes. They were already moving in. I pulled over 2 houses down, watching through the windshield. My pulse pounded in my ears. "You took everything," I whispered under my breath. "But you don't get to take my future." My phone buzzed again, Michael calling. "Indy, I reviewed the trust documents. Your father was very thorough. They don't have a legal leg to stand on." I looked at the house one more time, the morning light glinting off the rain-soaked windows. I said, "It already is," quietly. As the road curved toward town, the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the horizon gold. For the first time since last night, I smiled, not because everything was fine, but because the storm was mine to end. Tomorrow would be the start of my counterattack, and when it came, no one in the Reynolds family would ever forget it. Michael's office smelt like stale coffee and printer ink, the kind of place where exhaustion lived in the walls. I sat across from him, clutching a folder so tightly the edges had bent. He said, "They filed a deed transfer last week. Forged signatures, altered timestamps, but they were smart about it. Whoever helped them knew the system." My stomach dropped. "So they forged my dad's signature?" He said, "Most likely. But your father's trust overrides any deed manipulation if we can prove intent, which we will. His confidence steadied me, but the reality still hit like a wave. My own mother had forged her husband's dying wishes. I asked, "How long until we can get a court date?" He answered, "A few weeks, but Indy, you need to stay calm. They're going to play dirty." I almost laughed. They started with eviction. How much dirtier could it get? He met my gaze with something between pity and respect. You'd be surprised. I left his office feeling like I walked out of a war room with no armor. Outside, the city glistened under the post-storm sunlight, but nothing felt clean. Every puddle reflected the betrayal I woke up to. Back at the motel, Lily was sitting cross-legged on the bed, sketching in her notebook. "Look," she said, holding up a drawing of our house, colored in soft blues and grays. "I drew us on the porch. Grandpa's there too." My heart clenched. "That's beautiful, baby." She smiled faintly. "Do you think we'll ever go back?" I didn't answer right away. "We will," I finally said, though the words felt more like prayer than certainty. "It's still our home, no matter what they say." She nodded, satisfied for now. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the sound of the lock clicking shut, the way Mom's eyes had gone cold, and Tessa's smirk as if she'd finally proven she was the favorite daughter. I'd always known Tessa wanted approval more than love, and Mom's validation had been her oxygen. But I never thought they'd team up to erase me completely. The next morning, I returned to the hospital for my shift. My supervisor, Karen, greeted me with a worried look. "Everything okay at home?" she asked. I forced a smile. "Just some family issues." "Well," she said gently, "if you need time off—" "No," I interrupted. "Work helps." She nodded, though her eyes said she didn't believe me. As I walked through the halls, the smell of antiseptic hit me like memory. Dad's hospital room. The nights I'd slept in a chair beside his bed. I'd given up weekends, pay raises, even relationships to be there for him. And now his legacy was being stolen by the very people who never showed up. During lunch break, I opened my email and froze. Subject: ethics concern. Patient care complaint. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Someone had filed an anonymous report claiming I'd been mentally unfit due to grief and had endangered a patient by administering the wrong medication. My heart slammed against my ribs. It was a lie. I'd made no such mistake, but the accusation alone could destroy my career. I forwarded the message to Karen immediately, who promised an internal review, but her expression was tense. "This is serious, Indy," she said quietly. "If someone's targeting you, we need to find out why." I didn't have to guess who. The timing was too perfect. Mom and Tessa wanted me too distracted to fight. That evening, Michael called again. "You need to document everything. Emails, calls, texts. We can prove malicious interference." I started a digital folder, labeling it Reynolds Family Sabotage. Each file was another nail in the coffin of my trust in them. Meanwhile, the motel bill climbed and my savings dwindled. I took extra shifts, sometimes pulling 16-hour days just to stay afloat. Lily spent evenings with our neighbor from the old street, a kind widow named Mrs. Parker, who'd offered help when she heard what happened. "Your mama's stronger than she looks," Mrs. Parker told Lily once. "People who love truth always win in the end." I wanted to believe that, but every time I passed our old street on the way to work, my chest tightened. Mom had replaced the rose bushes with hydrangeas, and Tessa had installed wind chimes that clinked mockingly in the breeze. They were erasing me one decoration at a time. Weeks passed before the first court hearing. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and anxiety. Mom arrived in pearls and grief, her eyes red as if she'd been crying for months. Tessa clung to her arm, whispering like an obedient sidekick. Their lawyer, a slick man named Douglas Crane, greeted them with a practiced smile. When they saw me, Mom's face hardened. "You could still end this, Indy," she said softly, almost kindly. "You don't have to embarrass the family." I laughed bitterly. The family embarrassed itself when it threw a mother and child into the rain. Her lips tightened. "You've changed." "No," I said. "You just never really knew me." Inside, the proceedings began. Michael presented Dad's trust, notarized trust, financial records, and hospital logs proving my caregiving. Douglas tried to object, claiming undue influence and mental incapacity, but the judge, a composed woman named Judge Caldwell, wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said to Mom, "did you or did you not attend only 3 of your husband's 27 oncology appointments?" Mom hesitated, eyes darting toward her lawyer. I couldn't bear to watch him suffer." The judge's eyebrow lifted. "And yet your daughter managed it while working full-time as a nurse?" The silence that followed was its own kind of justice. After the session, Judge Caldwell granted temporary possession of the house to me and Lily until the final hearing. Relief crashed over me so violently I almost cried. Outside, reporters had gathered, drawn by the local gossip. Mom stepped forward, spinning her narrative to the cameras. "I just hope my daughter remembers that family matters more than property," she said, voice trembling on cue. I wanted to scream, but instead I turned and walked away. My colleagues from Austin General had showed up to support me, standing quietly behind me. That silent loyalty meant more than any headline. That night, as deputies escorted Mom and Tessa from the house, I watched from across the street, tears blurring my vision. Lily stood beside me, holding my hand. When the deputies handed me the keys, the metal felt warm, alive, as if the house itself had been waiting for us. We stepped inside, and for a moment, everything smelled like memory. Dad's cologne, lemon polish, old books. But the peace didn't last. In the days that followed, anonymous phone calls began. Heavy breathing, silence, then hang-ups. Once, someone left a dead bouquet on the porch with a note, "Ungrateful daughters lose everything." Michael advised installing security cameras, which I did immediately. Lily tried to act brave, but I caught her sleeping with the lights on. I kept reminding myself this was temporary, that truth would win. But then the next blow came. 3 days before the final hearing, the courthouse clerk called. "Miss Reynolds, I'm afraid your evidence file is missing from the system." My heart stopped. "Missing? How?" "It's not clear. It might be a technical error." I hung up and called Michael. His voice was sharp. "They're trying to derail the case. Find backups. Anything." Panic flooded me. I tore through boxes, USB drives, email archives, searching desperately. Nothing. Until Lily's voice piped up from the stairs. "Mom, what about Grandpa's tablet?" I froze. Dad's old blue tablet. He'd used it for everything. We rushed to unpack it. The battery was dead. But when it powered up, I nearly cried. All his files were there, including the trust documents and scanned medical affidavits. The password? My birthday. Dad had protected me even from beyond the grave. We spent the night reprinting every document, timestamping, notarizing where needed. By morning, we were running on caffeine and adrenaline, but we made it to the courthouse in time. When the clerk confirmed the submission, I exhaled for the first time in 12 hours. Someone tried to erase my father's legacy, but they failed. Still, I knew Mom wouldn't stop until she'd burned everything down. That evening, my phone rang. Her number flashed across the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Indy, she began softly, her voice trembling. I didn't sleep all night. This isn't what your father would want. Family should come first. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tightly. You mean the family that left me in the rain? You know I was upset, she said, tears audible in her tone. Tessa's boys are devastated. Can't we work something out? Maybe we share the house? My silence stretched. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. No. That single word landed heavier than any argument. The silence that followed was cold and long. You've turned cruel, she whispered. You're not my daughter anymore. You made that choice, I said, and hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the dark window. The rain began again, soft and rhythmic against the glass. It reminded me of that night, of standing outside the locked door. But this time, I wasn't on the losing side. This time, I had something they couldn't forge. Truth. Tomorrow was the final hearing. The end of the battle. And for the first time in my life, I was ready for war.
Mom and Tessa arrived moments later. Tessa wore white again, like she couldn't resist playing the innocent angel, while Mom's expression was carved from stone. She didn't look at me, not once. Her lawyer, Douglas, gave me a smirk that said he still thought he'd win. We took our seats, and Judge Caldwell entered, her presence commanding silence. This is the matter of Reynolds v. Reynolds estate, she began. My pulse thundered. Michael opened with our case, laying out every piece of evidence we'd rebuilt from Dad's tablet. Trust documents, emails, digital timestamps, hospital logs, all confirming my father's intent that I inherit the house and the remainder of his estate to provide for Lily. The judge read everything carefully, her eyes sharp, her posture rigid. Then Douglas rose, all smooth charm and false sincerity. Your Honor, he began, we sympathize with Miss Reynolds, but this case is driven by resentment, not truth. My clients, Mrs. Reynolds and Miss Tessa Reynolds, maintain that the decedent expressed, in his final weeks, a desire for unity and fairness, not favoritism. He motioned to Mom, who daubed her eyes with a handkerchief. My husband loved both daughters equally, she said in a trembling voice. He wouldn't have wanted division. That word, division, snapped something in me. For years, she'd used guilt as a leash. She called neglect boundaries, manipulation love, and cruelty toughness. I rose from my seat before Michael could stop me. With respect, Your Honor, I said, my voice shaking but loud enough to echo. My father didn't believe in fairness that ignored sacrifice. He believed in gratitude. When he was dying, Mom and Tessa were planning a vacation to Rome. I was the one emptying his bedpan, paying his hospital bills, holding his hand when he couldn't remember what year it was. And even then, he smiled at me and said, "Don't let them rewrite this story." The courtroom went dead silent. Tessa looked away. Mom's mouth trembled, but she stayed silent. Judge Caldwell gestured for me to sit, but her gaze softened just slightly. Noted, Miss Reynolds. Then came the moment that changed everything. Michael stepped forward with the flash drive. Your Honor, this contains a video file recovered from the decedent's tablet, dated 2 days before his passing. Douglas objected instantly. Unverified digital content. Overruled, said the judge. Let's see it. The lights dimmed slightly as the video played on the courtroom screen. Dad appeared, frail but smiling faintly from his hospital bed. If you're seeing this, he said, his voice thin but clear, it means I'm gone. I've signed the trust and I want to make it clear. I leave the house to Indy. She was here when no one else was. It's not about money. It's about who cared enough to stay. A sob escaped my throat before I could stop it. Dad looked straight into the camera. "And to my wife and Tessa, I love you, but please don't fight her. She's earned this." The video ended and the silence afterward felt holy. Douglas tried to salvage what was left. "That video could have been edited." "Enough," Judge Caldwell cut him off. "The metadata checks out, and you've had the opportunity to review discovery. This court has heard sufficient evidence." Her gavel came down once, sharp and decisive. "I hereby rule that the trust stands. Full ownership of the property and estate is granted to Miss India Reynolds." The words washed over me in slow motion. My knees went weak. Michael squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "You did it." But all I could hear was my heartbeat and Dad's voice echoing in my mind. Across the aisle, Mom sat frozen, her hand clutching Tessa's like a lifeline. Tessa's eyes filled with tears, not of remorse, but of disbelief. As soon as the judge adjourned, reporters swarmed, but I walked straight past them. I didn't need to explain anything. The truth had spoken for itself. Outside, the sky finally broke open, rain pouring down in heavy silver sheets. I tilted my face upward and let it hit me, washing away months of fear and humiliation. Then a voice behind me, Mom's. "Indy, wait." I stopped but didn't turn. "You won," she said, voice trembling. "Is that enough? You took everything." I turned slowly to face her. "I didn't take anything that wasn't already mine, but I'll tell you what I did take back. My peace." Her eyes filled with tears, but I could see the bitterness behind them. "You'll regret this," she said softly. "Maybe, but at least the regret will be mine." She turned away, shielding herself from the rain with her coat, and walked off without looking back. Tessa followed, her face pale, mascara streaked. I watched them disappear down the courthouse steps until they were swallowed by the crowd. When I finally returned home, Lily was waiting by the window. The moment she saw me, she ran into my arms. "Mom, did we win?" I lifted her up and spun her around. "We did, sweetheart. Grandpa made sure of it." She laughed, that pure bubbling sound that made everything worth it. That night, we sat on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes we'd never had the heart to unpack. The rain drummed gently on the roof, but this time it sounded like music instead of sorrow. I opened one of Dad's old boxes, finding a note tucked inside a book of poems. "Strength isn't in silence, Indy. It's in speaking when your voice shakes." I smiled through tears. "I think I finally understand, Dad." Days passed. Life began to heal in small, tender ways. I planted new roses in the front yard, the same color Dad used to love. Neighbors stopped by with congratulations and casseroles, and for the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. One evening, as the sun set in orange streaks across the horizon, Lily and I stood on the porch, the wind soft against our faces. "Do you think Grandma will ever say sorry?" she asked quietly. I thought for a long moment before answering. "Maybe someday. But forgiveness isn't about waiting for them. It's about freeing yourself." She nodded, wise beyond her years. A week later, an envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a photo. Mom, Dad, Tessa, and me, taken on my 12th birthday. On the back, Mom had written in her elegant handwriting, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I do remember you were the only one who stayed." My chest tightened, a complicated ache blooming where anger used to live. I didn't call her. I didn't throw the photo away either. I placed it on the mantle beside Dad's watch, a small reminder that even broken love still leaves fingerprints. Months later, Michael stopped by the house for coffee. "You ever think about selling?" he asked lightly. "Never," I said, smiling. "This isn't just a house. It's proof that truth survives." He raised his mug. "To truth, then." We clinked cups, and for once, I felt like the future wasn't something to fear. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I stepped out on the porch again. The hydrangeas Tessa planted were long gone, replaced by wildflowers Lily and I had sown ourselves. Fireflies drifted lazily through the dusk. The air smelled like new beginnings. But sometimes, when the wind rustles the trees just right, I still hear Dad's voice, soft, steady, proud. "You did good, kid." And in that moment, everything, the rain, the betrayal, the courtroom, the victory, fold into quiet peace. The house glows behind me, warm and alive, no longer a symbol of loss, but of endurance. I smile, whispering to the night, "We're home, Dad. We're finally home."